Hi, thank you so much for joining me for today's Wellness Wednesdays. Today we'll be talking about navigating the stigmatization of Asian American and Pacific Islander mental health, addressing AAPI representation at work and professional organizations, and prioritization with Vanessa, who goes by It's Vanessa on Instagram. Vanessa is a first-generation Filipino-American transportation engineer. She started her college career at her local community college and later transferred to San Diego State University, where she received her BS in civil engineering. Outside of work, she's heavily involved with the American Society of Civil Engineers, or ASCE, which is a professional organization, and she continually volunteers in events that helps promote girls pursuing engineering and helps entry-level engineers improve on their professional development skills. And with that, I'll be inviting her on.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just so thankful for your time.
No, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this, especially since it's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So it all worked out.
Absolutely. And I think what makes this so special, and again, I'm so thankful that you're willing to chat about this given the platform that you have, is not only is it AAPI Heritage Month, but it also falls on the same month as Mental Health Awareness Month. So I know that there are a lot of folks in the STEM community online who are in many ways addressing one or the other, but I wanted a space to honor both and the intersection of both because that intersection is stigmatized, as we know. And I'm so grateful that you're going to chat about it today. So thank you so much for joining me. And for anyone who's joining, from your end and has no idea who I am, I'm a first year master's student. I just completed my first year in aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech. Um, let's see. So I host these chats every week, and with my series, I hope to share that taking care of yourself is foundational, and suddenly pursuing your dream career despite all odds, getting that 4.0, setting boundaries, etc., does not feel challenging. And taking care of yourself can make you feel limitless with potential and further fuel your success, particularly amongst us minorities, which is why this series is called Wellness Wednesdays for minorities in STEM. So thank you so much for being here, Vanessa. So I always open by asking the people that join to share something about themselves that isn't in their official bio, to fill in the blanks a little bit and paint the picture a little better for anyone listening. So if you have a quirky sentence about yourself, would be open to anything.
Yeah, well, I guess something that I don't really put on my bio, and I saw your reel today, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that so much because I actually love to dance as well, and that's something that I don't put on my bio. Like I don't put my hobbies such as hiking, which you probably can see if you go onto my page, and I love to dance. I actually do love performing arts, which is something I don't really showcase on my Instagram, but it's something that if people want to know like you can do both, and that's why I think it's really important that like arts was added to STEM. So it's something that I think should be combined, and it's not something that necessarily needs to be separated, because I definitely think it's the fact that you're able to learn dances or learn music, like that helps like a different side of your brain that helps you remember things that could help on your left side of your brain, for example. So I think that's something that I guess I don't put on my bio that if anybody was interested in knowing.
No, I love that. And I definitely think that I'll be calling it Wellness Wednesdays for minorities in STEAM now, just to kind of provide that inclusionary space, because using all sides of our brain helps us show up as better engineers, or whoever we are in these spaces. So the second thing I usually always ask is to share how your combination of maybe going from one particular school and then transferring has helped you fulfill your kind of STEM goal. So I always ask engineers that come on here, or STEM professionals, what difference do you want to make in the world with the work that you're doing? And then how has your combination of schools helped you manifest that interest? So I'd actually love to, yeah, know your answer to that.
Yeah, so when it came to starting off in community college, I think that's something that, as an Asian American, like there's this stigma, like, oh, they're good at math, like they're smart enough, like they'll go to like this other college, and I think that that's something that I wanted to talk about when it came to mental health, because I think it's something that shouldn't always be assumed. Like, yes, I did enjoy math, and yes, like I did enjoy science and subjects like that. I didn't have like terrible grades in high school, but I think the stigma relating to going to community college first, I was questioned a lot actually by some of my teachers, and they were wondering why would you go to community college first? Like, shouldn't you go to this university? This, like, what was wrong with your grades? Like, they would question me, and I think as Asians, it can also, kind of put something in the back of our brain and make us feel like, oh, are we not worthy? And that's something that I kind of wanted to combine and show that it's okay to go to community college. Doesn't make you like less smart, less motivated, less of anything of a person. And kind of combining the fact that, again, I am Asian and people assume such things. I shouldn't, as my personal way of thinking, or any other Asian American, don't let any other person's view change the way your path or anything like that. To me, it was best to go to community college, and that was best for me. It might not be best for everybody, but relating to the whole mental health aspect, it's, knowing that you're good enough no matter what school that you go to. And I think that really helped me through my goals, because I was able to save money for one. And secondly, I actually really enjoyed going to community college because my classes were so much smaller, and I was able to really connect with not only the students there, but also my professors. So I really enjoyed that process, and it was definitely an experience for me going into a university where, if I went straight into a university, it would be filled with hundreds and hundreds of people that I would barely get a second to even talk to the professors. So that's kind of what happened with my journey. And I think that I really want to break that stigma that as an Asian, you have to go to this and that university because of your grades or how smart, like, people assume that you are, or assume that you should have money or anything like that. And secondly, being sure that people understand that it doesn't matter where you start as long as you get to the goal in mind. So I know that was a long-ended response, but kind of combining all the different aspects.
No, I love that response. And I guess what I was curious about is what were your goals kind of going in, and how did you find yourself how did you find yourself as a transportation engineer? Like, what kinds of things does that make you feel really excited about? And like, what kinds of projects do you feel like you've owned where you're like, wow, I really did that?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually didn't start off with a transportation engineer. I started off, so when you're in school, you start with a general engineering degree, which I was in civil engineering. And actually graduating right out of college, I was in land development, which I did really enjoy. I felt it was like a Jack and Jill of all trades. I was able to learn so many different things. But for me personally, it was definitely focused on the developer. And at some point, it didn't feel as if I was really benefiting to the community, if that makes sense. And like, not hating on anybody who does work in land development. That's just my personal thing, and I wanted something a little bit more. And so being able to transfer over to transportation engineering, I realized I was able to, help impact the community through safety, being able to help people connect through bikeways and different railway projects. And one of my main projects that is finally in construction, so I'm really excited. It has been 3 years in the making. I've been working on this project since I first started at this company, and it's a pedestrian undercrossing, and I'm really excited because the fact that there's an elementary school right across the street, there's a railway, and then there's like other businesses, and people are crossing this railway like dangerously, and there's no, unless they have to walk at least like a mile down or something along those lines. And so being able to create this safety project and having a way that people can safely cross under the railway is something that I'm really excited about, and that's one of my personal projects. I do have other projects down the line, but we're still working on that, so I'm not sure how much I can talk about those projects. And the thing about civil engineering and transportation engineering, a lot of our projects take a long time before anybody sees anything. So sometimes it's hard to fully talk about certain projects, but things like this is what gets me excited, being able to help people as they travel, no matter what it is, whether it's bikes, through cars, and trains. So that's where I get excited.
I love that. So I kind of just wanted to share like the ESPN highlights of anyone listening right now, like with just your STEM journey and how your schools fit into that journey, combined with, API mental health, is that you wanted to make an impact on the communities around you, and you felt like engineering was just a really good way of being able to do that and promote safety, and you could really be at the forefront of promoting that. And the combination of like the 2 years with community college and then your other school has helped you save so much money and give you the foundational skills necessary to kind of succeed and thrive in the position you are right now. Because I can personally share that like my 2 foundational years of engineering was filled with just so much self-doubt, because again, I see you shared, those classes were big and I didn't feel like I was learning. Like I felt like I was teaching myself. And I think it's so incredibly important to know that that's a path for you, and like your experience matters, and you have to consider how that could matter more so than any any school's name, because like you can get both, you can do both, and you can feel like you're confident and comfortable with the material that you're mastering in like those first 2 years. So I think that's such a important takeaway for anyone listening who might be just younger, wondering how to get into these spaces. So thank you so much for sharing. And if you're okay, I would love to kind of jump into the 3 topics at hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So the first one is on navigating the mental health stigma in AAPI communities. And I was wondering if you could just share your thoughts around that in terms of just bringing it up with whoever you feel comfortable with, even beginning to start those conversations as they kind of roll out on social media. What are ways that you've been able to bring this up with the people who are close to you or previous generations, so that we can pass off the right stuff to the other generations?
Yeah, I feel like there's not like a right answer to this, and I am not a professional in this topic by any means, but I definitely think when you start realizing that you're having, the anxiety or depression or anything along the lines of mental illness, that's something that you want to try to catch early on if possible. And sometimes the people around you may not understand why you're acting a certain way. They might not understand that it ties into those different mental illnesses. And I think it's great that nowadays we're really more open to talking about mental illness and mental health in general. But I think it's something that we still need to realize that as we talk about our feelings, we have to be really open, and the people who are receiving that, make sure that they're also open to hearing what you have to say, because through the Asian American community, I think there's this huge stigma that, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, you're fine, you're just making that up, it's just a bad day. So those are things that like people have heard when it came to mental health, and I need to reiterate that it's okay that you're not feeling okay, and making sure that you find somebody within either your friends or your family to talk about such things. and even, get resources. There's a ton of free resources out there. And as much as it can be hard to talk about it with family, I know sometimes family doesn't always understand, especially when they think that, you're gonna tough it out. Like there's all these different phrases that can be really triggering. But when you hear somebody is struggling, I hope me voicing this out, or even anybody else who might hear something related to this, is just be open to hearing what that person has to say. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything back. Just being there and listening to how that person is struggling when it comes to any mental illness is so important. And providing the help if needed, trying to repetitively check up on those people that do say that they're having such issues. And again, this is really hard because I think, although mental health has been brought up more recently, it's still something that I think a lot of people don't fully understand, because there's different, I can't give a specific example, but when it comes to the way that somebody might be acting, they might think like, oh, there's something wrong with them, or it's just a bad day. And or they don't, when somebody tries to voice what they're feeling, they end up not really helping the person. So my husband is a nurse, and so he actually has helped me kind of train in the way of conversation when it comes to this. And I had to learn as well, letting that person who has that mental health issue, letting them speak, letting them talk about what they're going through, and, letting them realize that, or letting them know that they are valued and that they matter. And that's the thing, though, when it comes to, again, AAPI, like we struggle with this quite a lot, and it's something that it's going to take some time for our parents and grandparents to fully understand, but it starts with our generation. So again, really long-ended explanation, but that's my advice when it comes to mental illness and mental health.
No, I found so much value in everything you were sharing because you set up just the dynamics and the problems so well. And I wasn't aware of just how you had that exposure from your husband, and I think that adds a layer of compassion when you kind of are able to think about these issues. What I was curious about is, for anyone listening now, or for anyone who listen later, if they do identify as being from the AAPI community and are struggling with finding the right family member to talk about these things with, do you have like any personal anecdotes of kind of navigating that, of kind of finding an ally within your family if it is challenging to bring up, or on the flip side, do you feel like you've had to find allies elsewhere? Like, what has your experience been with allyship within your closest circle, of the acknowledgement that this is real?
I would say it's a combination, and it definitely depends on the situation, because I don't know everybody's family members, or how, sometimes some family members can be a little bit more toxic and aggressive, which I don't want to, I don't know those specific family members, but those are definitely the ones that you don't fully want to open up to, obviously. But the ones that I would suggest opening up to would be either if you have a sibling that you're really closest to, or even a cousin. I would start with somebody who's within your age group, because they probably understand a little bit more about what's going around you, unless you're really close with your family member as well, or your parents. Then you can start off there. But I would definitely start off with the people who are within your age group, because they're the ones who are fully going to see what you've been going through without you having to tell them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I would say start off there, and then eventually, open up to your parents and let them know, because they're obvious, they love you, they want to support you, and maybe they know somebody who can help, even if they've never had experience when it comes to mental health or anything like that. Maybe they know somebody who could help with therapy or maybe provide for that therapy session, anything along those lines, because I really think it starts with home if you can. And if you're not finding that there, then I would go elsewhere to your closest friends, and hopefully, they also are understanding. I know, again, not everybody will understand the whole situation, and I know, a couple years back when mental illness first came up in my family, it was very difficult, and it's something that, again, not a lot of people fully understand. They want to feel for you, they want to help you out, but they just don't always know how to. So just having somebody that you feel comfortable with voicing out how you're really feeling, no matter if it is family or friends.
Right. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on kind of living with that duality of having a problem and being like wanting to voice it, but then not finding those allies everywhere, because everyone is still learning and growing, and the more we talk about it, the more people will feel compelled to learn more about it, even if it's not their problem. So I was wondering, just like from your personal experience and what in navigating that duality of like needing to be, or feeling the need to hide something or be okay to put up a front, with people who are still in your life who you can't talk about this with. Um, do you have any like words of advice or suggestions um, on like moving to a more like authentic space, definitely, but even just like inching away into authenticity, but also dealing with that duality of like needing to be okay, but then also feeling all the feelings and seeking help in communities that where you feel like it's harder to talk about this?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I would say it's a little bit hard, and that's why when it comes to, because sometimes you might not even know that you're dealing with these issues. And I would say having that close friend, that close sibling, and if they start asking you like, hey, like, if they notice something that's different from you, or if even you start to notice something different from yourself, like you're not eating well, you can't sleep very well, like different things. And I wish I could find a post, because I feel like there's posts relating to different signs when it comes to such triggers, because you might not know yourself that you might be going through something, and being able to step back, or even if somebody starts asking you like, hey, like, is there something wrong, like, or they don't have to say, is there something wrong, maybe reword that in a different way, but being able to, I guess, show that there's like there's something different, and it's a very I really wish I had a better answer for this, but from my experience, when I notice somebody who hasn't been as active as they used to be on something, or they start posting about something that relates to how they're feeling without saying how they're really feeling, it's such a fine line, and it's kind of hard to see sometimes. But when you notice somebody close to you saying such things that are not exactly how they typically are as a person, but you know that's still them authentically, reach out to them if you can before they reach out to you. Sometimes, if there's a person, for example, sitting in the corner and they're not saying anything, maybe they're in their head and not realizing that they're in their head. But if you notice somebody say something, it really starts with being more observant with your surroundings, and not just, we all get really caught up in our own lives. And I'm also like guilty of that as well, but being able to, keep an eye on your closest friends and asking them, hey, like, what's going on? Being able to reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm here for you, without saying that I need to hear what you're going through. That those little things. It's very hard. I know I can't pinpoint that exactly because I don't have that background in psychology and sociology, but that's my experience of being able to reach out without them having to reach out. And if they are having such feelings and they don't know how to voice it, sometimes just those passive posts of, hey, this is how I'm feeling, but at the same time, I'm trying to be better. You know, just showing that you need the help without saying that you need the help. If that makes
Absolutely,
sense.
yeah. And I don't want you to apologize for not like having a background in psychology. The whole point of this is to engage people in conversations who are in STEM or STEAM and get them to talk about these issues that we think are very like siloed, like when even though we all experience it. And I've always wanted to bring people on who've had kind of empowering experiences through it where they've learned something and would be willing to share. So yeah, please don't apologize that you don't have that background. Like your experiences again are so valid and we're all learning so much. I think the biggest thing that I got out of it was in like dealing with that duality to moving into a more like authentic space with those allies who understand your illness better. I think the first step is, you know, understanding and asking yourself, like, who are you? Or like, who am I? And then like, how are you? Or like, how am I? So it's like finding, like, understanding who you are and how you're feeling so that you can build the right kind of community around you so that if things go wrong or you have a mental illness that acts up or, you know, others do, you can reflect it back to each other so you can like you can hold a mirror up for someone else. And I feel like that is so key because I think a lot of us in terms of our communities and especially in the AAPI community, like we are building more like homogenous groups where we feel safe, where maybe we look similar or we act similar or we eat similar cuisine, and that brings us comfort and safety. And, you know, we're already far away from our like Asian or Pacific Islander heritage. So there's like wanting to feel safe with people who can give us those feelings of safety, but then also realizing that your people may be a combination of like AAPI folks, but then a lot of other kinds of people. Like you might be fully and authentically understood by someone who isn't AAPI, or you might be understood by someone who is, but it's like you have to be more open-minded. I think one of the biggest things within the community is us giving ourselves permission to be more open-minded and truly not just like thinking of it as a thought, but doing it in deed. So like making sure our deeds and our thoughts are synced, because everyone's like, I feel like aware or smart, or that's what the you know, general notions are of this community, but there seems to be like a gap between our thoughts, our general thoughts, and the actions that would make sense with those thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And again, it's something that we're all still learning, still growing and trying to figure out, because I'm still figuring out and still learning what's the best way to approach such things, and I'm no expert in it, like I mentioned, but definitely connecting those two dots of being able to not just think it. And I really like what you mentioned of being a mirror, because it helps having somebody else who you can count on and reflect on, hey, like there's something going on, like let's talk about it, or like just voice out however you're feeling, and that can just let out some steam and be able to show you how you have been acting without you realizing it at that point in time.
Absolutely. Okay, so I kind of want to move into the second topic, which is just representation at or in professional organizations, because you have a lot of experience, you know, leading your local chapter of ASCE, and with just the Stop Asian Hate movement, there's been the need to, you know, show up at these places, not just as like a leader of the organization, but also be the representation, and sometimes have to speak up and draft those statements to show solidarity with the community. And being a part of the community, we or you may often feel tasked to write statements on behalf of ourselves. So when you're put in that interesting situation, I would kind of love to know about how you've been able to process and then write those email blasts, or to not only cope, but then to feel like you are able to move forward to be a part of the movement and to be present in the movement when things feel so painful. So it's like, again, that duality. But
Yeah.
if you could kind of tell me about navigating that, finding the right mindset to start writing those emails out, that feel necessary. Yeah, I would love to know about that.
Yeah, when it comes to my professional organizations and even with work, I'm involved in both DEI groups, so both at work and through my organization. And I think it's really important to discuss these issues. But at the same time, I did have to take a break and a step back. I've been a little less on social media due to that fact, and being able to take that time aside so that I can clear my mind and be able to put together a statement, or even coordinate with anybody else in those organizations as to how we're really feeling, how can we talk about such things, how can we support the AAPI group as well and stop Asian hate. There's so many different factors, and I think we're still navigating through how exactly, what we can do, and it's really just constantly promoting and talking about these issues is what can really help the conversation, like keep the conversation going. And so I did feel like I was tasked to do such prompts, and because I am Asian American, and it's very I almost didn't want to do at the same time, because I felt like, why am I the only one who is thinking about such things? But at the same time, if I don't say anything, who is going to say something? So it's a combination of those things of I felt the need that I still need to put something together, but also, why is it, the person of that ethnicity, of that race, is tasked onto those things. So that's something that I think that we're still working on as a society, and I think it shouldn't be placed on the people of those specific heritage or background. So
Absolutely, yeah. And so what I was curious about is, if, through your professional organization, if someone who wasn't within, like if you had the opportunity to be able to work alongside someone who wasn't within this community, so that the burden of the task could be, spread out, and like everyone was engaged in trying to draft a statement, trying to solve the issue, trying to move forward, rather than the burden of it falling upon the minority who is, being harmed by what is being shared or seen on the news. What would you like wish you could say to folks, or like how could you begin reaching out within these kind of organizations, so that that burden is like split? Like, would it be kind of like sending another blast to request folks to participate, or like have you ever dealt with that where you've just wanted to share that workload with someone, or like even at work, have you ever, like, not related to drafting any statements or things like that, or related to any like movements or like racial movements of that sort, like what are ways in which you've succeeded in kind of reducing the burden of something on yourself as a professional, and how could that be translated into tasks like this, where it's like, okay, you know what, we're professionals and this is hard for everyone, just like work is, so let's split this stuff up. Like, do you have any like advice, or you brainstorm with me? How would that go?
I think that's something, the fact that like both the DEI groups that I mentioned, they're still growing, and I think right now it's still placed on the minorities, which is something that I still am not so happy about. I'm glad that we have a DEI organization, but at the same time, it shouldn't be placed on those who are minorities, and we need allies, and I think that's something that I'm still trying to figure out, honestly. But having a group that is a safe space that I can talk to those people about such issues really does help, and it does. But maybe because such things happened at such a instant that it was hard to fully, I guess, plan out exactly when to write such statements or talk about such issues. But I think in the long run, this gives us the time and gives us the availability to start talking about such issues and how we can do better. You know, and I want to shout out my friend Lorena. She Girl Changes the World. She has the company Every Point One, and I think that's something that is really great. Like what they're doing is so important, and being able to connect everybody. She can talk obviously so much more about that, but I really love their mission, and that it's not something that HR has to be focusing on. It's not something that the minorities have to be thinking about, and that's what I think is really important. Having that safe space. And I don't have, I wish I had more answers for you, but when it comes to finding the people to talk about such issues, I really like connecting with people who I feel safe with and being able to talk to them about that, to brainstorm those ideas. And it's not anything, if they're not all in the DEI group, but just people in general that I feel most comfortable with. So I'm so mad. I wish I had a better answer.
No, I think this was a really good answer in terms of just that theme or that running theme of like allyship within your communities. Because I think what happens is that when we're at like work, you know, with the best interest, like keeping everyone's best interest in mind, or with our families, like if we want to expect the best of people, our natural instinct would be to think that yes, everyone would be an ally or everyone would agree with me. But, you know, as we've seen, that's not entirely true. And so allyship does not need to come from strangers online who, you know, support your movements. It needs to first and foremost start in like the personal communities that you're in. And I don't think I've actually participated or seen any conversations surrounded or like on the topic of allyship within family or allyship within like your work inner circles. It's mostly been like this. I feel like conversations surrounding allyship have felt like this monolith of an other. Like it's like me and I want allyship from someone else or something else, but I feel like because we're still learning about how to be better allies, we haven't kind of identified that, like, what are the best ways of it starting at home? And even though we're trying and there's so much content on social media surrounding that, I haven't like participated in discussions where it's like allyship, mental health, and like a racial movement surrounding hate, right? So like when all of these things come together, it creates such interesting intersections where the solution still is like those conversations to allyship that are uncomfortable, and we want to keep moving forward, but it's this like just global reckoning of like you have to address it now. Like the time really is now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think, especially last summer, like it's almost been a whole year since George Floyd, and being able to, you know, realize that this is something that has been going on for many years. Even the Asian hate, it's been going on for many, many years, and being able to talk about that now and the intersectionality of everything is just, I'm really glad a lot of people now are talking about it, and it's still something that I think we all have a hard time figuring out how exactly to fix the problem, and it's going to be a long time until this is all the problems are fixed, but being able to constantly talk about it, and there's many issues in the fact that we're through social media, through being able to see the news on our phone so easily. It's just constantly talking about it and not forgetting, not just posting a black story, for example, and never saying a thing ever again. I think that's something that we have to constantly bring up and not forget that these topics need to be talked about. And I know it's really hard because we are still living in a pandemic. We are still going through our own issues, but being able to be there for each other when it comes to any of these issues, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to any racial injustices, just constantly talking about that, I think is so important, and not forgetting, especially once we all start going back to normal, I think it's really important not to forget what we have experienced through this past year and constantly talk about these issues. So it's very hard, it's very, tiring, and I definitely felt really tired when it came to talking about these topics, but, I really hope that we gain more allies through this, and also hope that, more allies can also help so that the minorities aren't going through this alone and don't feel that we aren't supported in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess my biggest takeaways from just the first two topics of navigating like API mental health, and then navigating just representation, API representation in professional organizations. I guess, again, the common theme is like finding those allies within cousins, siblings, and your closest like work, either friends or just like colleagues, like your closest colleagues, like starting those conversations there, and not stopping. And so in terms of just not stopping, that's such a, again, challenging thing. It feels kind of like this never ending task that might feel overwhelming. And that's why, our last topic was on prioritization, where with these intersectionalities, like you have to take extra good care of yourself so that your like your representation in these spaces and your good work as a civil engineer is the representation, that is needed, for other people to be able to be in these spaces as well. So like, you never signed up to be a DEI advocate, you signed up to be a civil engineer. And so in being a civil engineer, but then balancing navigating API mental health and representation, what are the processes that you have in place that help you stay organized and keep your priorities straight so that you can juggle all of these challenging things that extend beyond who you are as a professional, like effectively, so that you can progress in your career, you can do all the things that you want to do beyond having to speak on these issues?
I definitely would say, I know you mentioned on the last live that they use Passion Planner, is that correct? And I definitely love Passion Planner. That really helps me stay organized. But I would also say another thing that helps me is having sticky notes. I know, even though I have a planner, I have sticky notes absolutely everywhere, like pasting all these different things. And that's where I would sometimes write like a little note of like how I'm feeling, or note like, hey, check up on this friend, check up on somebody that I know who might be struggling, because that's the important thing. We get so caught up in our own lives that we have to remind ourselves that sometimes people need us as well. Sometimes we need to reach out to those friends and families and colleagues who might need somebody to talk to, and just having those little reminders. And when it comes to also, speaking up on anything related to DEI, I definitely have an Outlook on my computer. I would use Outlook to set reminders of when I can talk to friends. One of my friends actually started this unscripted, this chat away. Like it's completely an open and safe space. So it's really great to be able to talk to friends like that, because we are in a virtual world and sometimes we do forget to reach out to different friends. So having those scheduled chats has been really helpful for me.
I absolutely love that. And I think previously you had mentioned something about the Notion app.
Yes, yeah, I do use Notion as well. So I can't really go into it because my computer's off now, but Notion is another great planning app. You can use it on your phone or on a computer, and you can create free planners if you don't have a passion planner, if you prefer PDF form, or if you like to-do lists. Like it's almost like a self-scheduler that there's definitely a ton of templates that you can use that is completely free, and it helps me organize my different thoughts. And even with social media, actually, sometimes I'll have different ideas that I want to jot down, and sometimes it's a lot easier to put it down on an app such as Notion and be able to organize when exactly I want to post certain things or what type of topics I want to talk about, or even articles. There's so many different things that I use Notion for, honestly, that have been really helpful for me to keep track of all the things that kind of go on in my mind.
No, I love that. And I bet anyone, listening right now or later can kind of write these tips down so that they can follow up and incorporate these tools so that they can show up both as the professional that they know they are, but then also deal with these very real racial reckonings and um, be a champion for mental health and talking about mental health. Okay, so I have two last questions for you. The first one being, can you tell me a little bit about your morning or night routine or both, and what helps you bounce back when you fall off track?
So I'll go with my morning routine because that's something that I think I'm pretty consistent with. So typically I would, get out of bed, do the typical hygiene things, but then also I would make my morning matcha. I always have matcha. Like I a little sensitive to caffeine, so matcha works best for me. And then I water my plants. So that's really soothing for me, being able to give back to like my plants, and it's just something that like really keeps me set into the mood, very calming. And then usually I would also get like my facial spray and then just like spray it all over and like gives myself like a refresh, a restart. I definitely am more of a night workout person, so that's also why working out is not part of my morning routine. But if I can, then I will schedule workouts. But for the most part, that is my overall morning routine. Then I'll check into my laptop to start the workday.
Amazing. And then is there anything that helps you bounce back if don't water your plants or you're just having a really rough time?
I would say what helps me bounce back is just staying away from social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like the main thing. I think there have been actually for the past like month or two, especially when I was studying for my test, I had to stay away from social media and give myself a break because I think it was very tiresome, and especially when it came to different social issues, I couldn't keep I couldn't keep up anymore, if that makes sense. Like I felt like with social media you always had felt the need to keep up with everything, and it got very tiresome. And so being able to reset myself by staying away from things helped me bounce back and get that energy back again so I can feel like myself.
Absolutely. And then if you feel like yourself, then you can kind of do the allyship work and then be a champion for AAPI representation, but not have to necessarily either post about it or um, like be affected by social media on it. You can kind of like do the activism just by your presence and feeling like you're okay.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my last question is, what does wellness mean to you as a civil transportation engineer, passion planner user, API, all the things?
Wellness to me is definitely feeling that you are happy and you are safe, and that's by doing the things that do make you happy. If you do like to work out in the morning, go for it. Um, being able to feel that you are making an impact, and that's really into civil engineering. And that's why I chose transportation specifically. I felt like I was making an impact, and that helps me feel good. And being able to do different hobbies outside of work, outside of social media or anything along those lines. Do things that really make you happy, and taking care of yourself, such as drinking water. I know that that's what people tell you all the time to do. Yes, drink water. I actually used to tell my coworker when I would pass by in the office, I would always remind him to drink water. So it's pretty funny. I do miss doing that, but
Yeah.
being able to just find the things that help you stay healthy as a human being as much as you can. And it's hard, we can't do everything, but do the best that we can.
No, absolutely. And I guess I just wanted to thank you for, being on this conversation with me, talking about harder than necessary things, but important things in a time when you were taking your social media break. That means so much. And, everyone that's kind of hopped on and, will listen to this later has definitely appreciated it so much. So thank you just for your time and for the mental capacity to kind of show up to speak on this, because it's important, and the intersectionality between just being AAPI and like celebrating the heritage, but then also recognizing the importance of mental health conversations in these communities. Thank you for just wanting to talk on that. I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you for reaching out to me. And I think I love that you have these Wellness Wednesdays, because these are topics that are really hard to talk about sometimes. And I think that although we may know of these topics, sometimes there's so much more deeper. And that's why, again, I have a hard time fully getting in depth with these topics. But at the same time, I really feel for these different topics, because they all connect and they are all part of our life. And especially now during the pandemic, it's so important to talk about.
Absolutely. So for anyone who's tuning in, just from my end, I would love if you followed Vanessa. She's just doing amazing things, and there are we just need like more representation in civil engineering, and she provides that so well. So please follow her. And Vanessa, if you have any closing thoughts, please feel free to share it. Otherwise, I can end the live.
I don't have anything else, but I really do appreciate anybody who does listen to this. Please, again, feel free to reach out to either of us, because I think it's really important to keep the conversation going.
Yay. Okay. Thank you so much for chatting. Happy Wednesday. Have an amazing rest of your week. I'll be ending the live now. Bye.
Okay. Bye.